Welcome to All the Things, a podcast for moms seeking an inspired life. Hi, I'm your host, Lisa Chin. I am a writer and a coach, and my most passionate truth is that the world needs the real you. That's why I created this podcast, to discover all the things that make us who we are. Because the better we understand ourselves, the more good we can do in the world. So, let's do that together. Hi, welcome to the first episode of All the Things. I am Lisa Chin. I am the host and creator of this podcast, and I am feeling excited and anxious and scared, but mostly happy to be speaking to you today. When I was thinking about what to share in this first episode, I thought it would be important to just kind of give an overview of who I am and like what to expect in this podcast. And then you can kind of decide if this is your place or if it's not. And before I get going, I wanted to first acknowledge that I am speaking and podcasting from the traditional and unceded lands of the Nipmuc and Massachusetts tribes who lived and continue to live in the land that I reside on outside of Boston. When I was going through the process of developing this podcast, I knew that I wanted to include a land acknowledgement. This is not a social justice podcast. It's not something that is going to be the center of the topics shared, but it is very, very much part of my value system. I completely stand for social justice and equity. And it is going to be woven through the conversations because I don't think we can talk about who we are without acknowledging where we are and who else is around us. And the land acknowledgement is part of that process of orienting us to where we are, understanding that there's history before us, and understanding that we are also connected. Even if I don't know a person from the Nipmuc tribe, I have benefited from their stewarding this land for so many years. And I also am benefiting from the fact that Indigenous people are advocating for the biodiversity on this planet. So there is really no me without us, without them, without all of us. And the land acknowledgement is part of that process and part of that grounding of the conversation and recognition. This practice that I'm cultivating on this podcast and hopefully throughout the rest of my life is really comes from my course with Kelly Deals. The course is called We Are the Culture Makers, and she starts every video and every call with a land acknowledgement. And I remember hearing her do it for the first time because I'd heard and seen land acknowledgements, but I hadn't experienced it in kind of this learning capacity. And it was really powerful for me to be there and to kind of be reminded every time. And the thing with the land acknowledgement is that I know for a fact it will evolve over time as I weave my work a little tighter and I understand more about myself and I can understand more about my connection to the Indigenous people. But I also think it's important for me to say it while I'm saying it imperfectly, because the work of supporting other people and supporting marginalized communities is an imperfect type of work. There's a lot of unlearning, relearning, dismantling, and rebuilding. And if we just wait until we have the perfect land acknowledgement or the perfect plan to go forward with something, we will never get where we want to be. And, I'm not the most polished person. Most of these conversations will be very, very unedited. And I think it's really important for me to be who I would be if you saw me on the street and had a conversation with me, or saw me in the store. And for you to be like, oh, you're exactly like I had thought you would be because I had listened to you. I'm not the most polished person. I am not someone who is very strict about really most things. But I think it's important that there's an understanding, and I don't think we can live in a world. I certainly don't want to live in a world where we can't actually have real conversations with one another and can't be genuine. I think it's easy for us to have loose relationships and to lead very polished lives these days, because a lot of people, and myself included, have online lives. And when it's online, there's a huge ability to be curated and polished and really pretty and put together and framed out and filtered. And that's kind of not what I'm about. I want us to get to having real connections and real conversations and be really fulfilled ultimately. The reason that I created this podcast is because about 7 years ago, after becoming a mom, I kind of had this self-identity crisis. I had no idea how to describe myself. Mom didn't seem to fit, but all the other things didn't seem to fit either. And it took me over a year to kind of really come to the realization of who I am, and that is to live an inspired life. And I had realized until that point, I had been living an inspiring life. So a life seeking to inspire others, seeking for the likes or for the person to come up to me and say, oh my gosh, you're doing something that's really cool, or I wish I could do that, or whatever it is. That's what I had been trying to do. And then when I realized that who I am is I am the person who follows her curiosities and inspirations. And I am the person who seeks an inspired life. And I seek to be inspired. And that is what I want to do and want to feel as much as I can. I don't know if I should want to feel it every single second of every day. I think that's a little too much maybe. But I want to be inspired. And what inspires me is a little bit of everything, really. But what I've been most focused on and really relentlessly is just who am I over the past 6 years. And even coming up with the phrase to live an inspired life, there is this continuous exploration of who am I? What does this mean about myself? And I've learned that the more that I understand about myself, the more I understand other people. And the more grace that I give myself and empathy that I give myself, the more I can give that to other people as well. So the self-work doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? We are community-driven beings. We are relationship-driven beings. So what we do will always have an impact on other people, whether we recognize it or realize it or not. That is just the way the world works. I'm also kind of I'm a big believer in energy. I'm level 2 Reiki attuned and done a little bit of energy work. And I'm definitely a big believer that what we kind of put out there in terms of energy has an impact on kind of the wider world. So what does that mean about this podcast? Well, this podcast is going to bring conversations with people that inspire me, or about topics that I am curious about, or maybe a little bit of both. And the thing is, everything sort of inspires me on some level, because it all is an opportunity for examination. And I don't know if everyone feels this way, but I am intensely curious about myself. And because I want to know why. Why do I do things this way? And why do I think these thoughts? When I try to solve problems or when I try to find solutions, I think about the source. I try to drill all the way down to the source of the problem. And so when I'm looking and I'm trying to think about, let's say, creating a podcast and I'm meeting resistance, I think, well, why am I meeting that resistance? What is the source of that? So I can kind of overcome it or work with it so that I can do the thing that I want to do. And I am intensely curious about other people and kind of how they got to where they are. Growing up in my household, we didn't really have these conversations much at all. My Chinese vocabulary doesn't allow me to do that, but it also just wasn't part of the culture in our house and in our family. So as an adult, I have enjoyed every single opportunity that I can to meet other people, learn about their background, learn about what they're doing, and then weave that into what I do and what I want to do and who I am. Because the better that we understand ourselves, the better we understand other people. And when we can do both of those things, that's when we can really change the world. If you are trying to find your next podcast home and what I've said has jived, I hope that you continue on to the next episodes. The podcast will be season oriented. It kind of helps me stay in my lane and keeps me focused for a certain period of time. And it also may evolve. I am very much building this plane while I am flying it. And I remember the first time I heard that phrase in the corporate world, and I'm thinking, what are they talking about? But that's what we're doing every day. There are no handbooks, guidelines, user manuals for the lives that we are living. And I do not have the answers. I am the person that you come to for coaching where results are not guaranteed, because that's not possible when we are doing this kind of work, when we're trying to learn more about ourselves and trying to get to where our aspirations are met. But what I can promise you is that I'm going to be as real as I can on this podcast, and I hope that gives you permission to be as real as you can be in your own life. On my website, lisaforreal.com, I actually have a list of my truths in there, and my truths are these statements that when I say them, I feel them deep down inside my bones, down to my core, and there's like this reverberation in my bones. And my final truth is that the world needs the real you, because you are the only version of you out there. And if you can live authentically and on purpose and fully within yourself, and if we could all do that, this planet would be filled to the brim with beauty and love and vibrancy And honestly, like, peace on earth. If we can get down to the real version of who we are. And maybe I'll share kind of my idea of that is in a future podcast. But I'm happy that you've stayed with me and listened to the end of this. I hope this episode has given you a glimpse and a taste of who I am and what's to come for all the things. I can't wait to spend this time with you again in the next episode. If you ever need to reach out to me, you can find me at Reclaiming Motherhood on Instagram, or you can reach me through my website at lisaforreal.com. All right, I'll talk to you next time. Thank you for tuning in today. A great big thank you to Medfield TV for their support and editing this episode. Living an inspired life is a worthy endeavor. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Be sure to subscribe in your preferred podcast player for future real conversations. And if any part of this episode made you think of a friend, let them know that they aren't alone in their journey and share all the things with them. If you'd like to stay in touch, hop on over to lisaforreal.com and sign up for my daily blogs. Or find me on Instagram at Reclaiming Motherhood. See you next time.